Good afternoon, everyone. Happy Monday. Today's lineup, we have Department of Public Safety, Community Supervision, and Department of Juvenile Services. We will go in that order, and our analysts will get us started.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good afternoon. My name is Catherine Barber, and today I will be presenting the fiscal 26 budget for DPSCS Community Supervision. The budget totals $139.7 million, which is a $3.8 million increase, or 2.8% from the fiscal 25 working appropriation. Exhibit 1 on page 3 shows an overview of the major spending areas. Personnel expenses for the 1,186 regular positions in community supervision total $124 million, or 89% of the allowance. As I said, the allowance increases by $3.8 million, mostly for regular personnel costs. The breakdown of the changes is shown in Exhibit 2 on page 4. There's an increase of $8.8 million, mainly for new salaries and fringe benefits for 34 new positions. And costs also increase for contractual sex offender monitoring services, motor vehicle operations, and various equipment, supplies, and materials due to inflation and a rise in the number of community supervision cases. Of those 34 new positions provided in fiscal 26, half are the result of contractual conversions of DPP office support positions, and the other half are support positions transferred from other areas of DPSCS. Community supervision is operating with lower vacancy rates than budgeted in both the working appropriation and the allowance. The difference between the appropriation allowance and the actual vacancy rate translates to an estimated shortfall of about $2.76 million in fiscal 25 and $2.53 million in fiscal 26. This isn't too much of a concern because other areas of DPSCS have reported higher vacancy rates than budgeted, so this funding could be realigned by budget amendment if necessary. As of December 2024, the agent vacancy rate was 7.9%, which is shown in Exhibit 3 on page 7. The first issue I'd like to highlight regards the DPP response to the tragic murder of 6-year parole agent Davis Martinez on May 31st, 2024. At the time of his death, agents were issued ballistic vests and pepper spray. DPSCS has since ordered multi-threat vests for agents and placed armed guards in offices across the state. These measures were funded in the budget using fiscal 25 deficiency appropriations of about $743,000 for the vests and $1.5 million for the armed guards. Also, agents' phones will be equipped with tracking technology that informs their supervisors of their location during work hours, but the terms of use are still being bargained with AFSCME representatives. The budget also contains about $429,000 for body-worn cameras contingent on the enactment of legislation allowing their use. Again, conversations with the unit about incorporating cameras and other equipment like firearms are still underway. Agent Martinez's murder also led DPSCS to suspend home visits, and as of the writing of this analysis, it has been about 8 months since parole agents conducted home visits. Agents have been in contact with offenders through in-person office meetings and video calls, and critical need contacts and absconder home visits have been completed by the Warrant and Apprehension Unit, Intel and Investigation Division, and DPP Safety Support Specialists. DPSCS reported that it does not intend to resume home visits until it can re-equip and retrain its agents. Training is supported in Senate Bill 197 and House Bill 123, which are seeking to expand membership of the Correctional Training Commission to include the Director of Parole and Probation, which would allow DPP to expand its access to resources as it approaches retraining its agents. DPSCS also stated that it is in the process of strengthening its risk assessment tools and safety protocols, including the possibility of having armed police officers accompany agents on home visits. Current policy is for agents and their supervisors to decide on a case-by-case basis when to engage with law enforcement. But DPSCS has stated that it's working toward establishing a memorandum of understanding with local law enforcement agencies and will be beginning a 90-day pilot program with Montgomery County Police Department this month. Should this policy go into effect, the amount of time to conduct a home visit will probably increase, potentially leading to additional caseload challenges. This policy would also require significant coordination with law enforcement agencies and could face obstacles related to personnel, scheduling, and other resources. Finally, an internal investigation by DPSCS published in June 2024 concluded that there was no evidence that Agent Martinez violated any policies, and DPSCS found no definitive answer regarding how his death could have been prevented. Since then, the agency has agreed to an independent investigation. DLS recommends restricting $150,000 in general funds pending a report on DPSCS's strategy to improve the safety of community supervision agents. This recommendation and the associated budget language can be found on page 13 in the recommended action section. The second issue I'd like to discuss regards agent caseloads, which remain high. Exhibit 4 on page 10 shows the number of cases supervised in each category. The total for fiscal 2024 was 85,343, which is a 3% increase from fiscal 23, mostly driven by a rise in the number of individuals on probation. Of those cases, about 34,000 were actively monitored by agents. The American Parole and Probation Association, APA, provides guidelines for caseloads depending on the risk level of clients. DLS calculated that the recommended caseload ratio for Maryland's community supervision agents is about 70 cases per agent using those APA metrics. Exhibit 5 on page 11 shows the average cases per agent by region compared to this calculation. All regions saw a decline in cases per agent in fiscal 24, mainly driven by a recent increase in the number of agents, but only 2 of 4 regions met the recommended ratio. DLS recommends adopting committee narrative requesting that the annual report on DPP caseloads for parole and probation agents be submitted by September 15th, 2025. The last issue I'll discuss regards delays to DPP's transition to a new risk assessment tool. DPP is required by statute to utilize an evidence-based risk and needs assessment tool to assess and classify individuals brought under their supervision. And in the past, most agents have used 2 tools, the initial risk screener or IRS, and the level of service inventory revised or LSIR. Between fiscal 2021 and 2024, DPSCS contracted independent studies into whether its risk assessment tools were effectively predicting recidivism and whether they needed to be replaced or updated. And the main recommendations from the contractors were that DPP should update or replace all of its tools, namely the LSIR and the DDMP risk assessments were recommended to be retired. The contractors recommended that in the meantime, DPP should use the IRS, which is an effective predictor of recidivism, as the primary risk assessment tool while they select a new tool. Furthermore, the contractors recommended that DPP should spend more time and resources on training staff to administer and score the risk assessments. DPP has incorporated recommendations related to its existing assessment tools and had initially planned to select a new one by the end of fiscal 24. However, personnel changes contributed to delays, and as of now, there has been no selection or implementation of any new tools. The JCR on this topic discussed that DPP was going to hold off on implementing a new tool until its incoming director could review the findings of the contractor's studies. In the meantime, DPP has continued to utilize the IRS as the primary tool, and effective January 1st of 2025, DPP mandated 40 hours of annual community supervision training, including training on the administration and completion of risk assessments. DLS recommends adopting committee narrative requesting that the annual report on the implementation of new DPP risk assessment tools be submitted by September 1st, 2025. This concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any questions for our analysts? Anyone? All right, Madam Secretary, Madam Director, or whomever you're going to bring up. Please proceed when you're ready. Just identify everyone, please.
Good afternoon, Chair Jackson, members of the committee. For the record, my name is Carolyn J. Scruggs, and I'm the Secretary of the Maryland Department of Public Safety and Correctional Services. With me today are Joseph Sedal, Deputy Secretary of Administration, and Yolanda Bethia, the Acting Director of Division of Parole and Probation. The department appreciates the collaboration with the Department of Legislative Services and Ms. Barbara's hard work and analysis. I would also like to take a time to thank DBM analyst Christina Jorge Chuyon for the advice and guidance that she's provided during this budget submission. As you know, I'm a long-term employee here with the department. I'm honored to be here today testifying not just on the budget, but on behalf of the dedicated and hardworking professionals who come to work every day and uphold the mission of the department. Community supervision is an essential component of our public safety mission. It involves many stakeholders working in collaboration with the courts and local law enforcement. We are proud to work with various agencies and community partners to help people live successful lives despite the many barriers they face. DLS did not ask the department to comment on any specific issues. The department concurs with the 3 recommendations for the reports. I would like to take a few minutes to update you on the progress we're making with our safety initiatives and what we've undertaken since I last presented before you. Law enforcement grade OC spray was received at the end of January, distributed to each one of our 4 regions, and is currently being distributed to all certified agents who have been trained in its use. As of today, more than 600 multi-threat vests have been ordered. To date, we have received 307 multi-threat vests, which are currently being dispersed. An additional 35 agent candidates have been hired who will be fitted for multi-threat vests during their academy, which begins in 2 weeks. We're actively meeting with the union related to the 9 policies impacting employee safety. We completed 2 bargaining sessions last week, and we have 3 scheduled for this week. The Fluid Mobility Act is undergoing further testing and will be fully deployed once bargaining is completed with the union. Earlier this week, a scope of work was submitted to 3 organizations agreed upon by the union for independent review of the agency's practices surrounding the death of Agent Martinez. We've conferred with the president-elect of APA and have been advised that the guidelines are close to completion and will be accredited and audited by the American Correctional Association. DPSCS received official notification of a citation from the Maryland Department of Labor on January 31st and have complied with the required posting in our Silver Spring office. Before the receipt of the citation, the department had already evaluated and significantly expanded current and proposed safety controls that respond to this tragic incident and reflect direct impact on our employees' concerns. As you have already heard today, the department has moved with urgency in replacing and enhancing essential safety equipment like defensive spray and multi-threat body armor. Many of these measures and improvements to internal administrative practices are elements identified within the most citation as potential abatement actions. In conclusion, I am proud of the employees of this department, the dedicated team of managers that we have, as well as our community partners, and we're happy to answer any of your questions.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. Before I go around, a quick question for you, and great job on getting the equipment and having conversations with the employees to get them involved. I do understand that there are some standard operating procedures that you all are going through, and well, are they a part of the conversations you're having with the acting director as well as with the union as you're putting those in place?
Are we talking outside of the 9 policies that
Yes, ma'am.
we are written? So they are going through all of the standard operating procedures right now to ensure that they're all up to date. Some of them, they are having meetings with the union on, and others, they have not gotten to that point yet.
Okay. Secondly, in-service training for those employees that are already on board. We understand once the new employees go through the academy that all the training will be incorporated there. Do you have a schedule for the existing employees for their training on the?
Thank you for that question. We expanded the in-service training for DPP to 40 hours. They were originally only doing 72 hours. And we started the pilot in December. The first class has been through in-service training in January. So yes, there is a proposed schedule. Everyone has to go through in-service training every year.
And this will be incorporated, the particular new pieces of equipment and other additional trainings will be a part of their in-service training, correct? So, and I'm asking that as an appropriator, looking at the overtime for the trainings of the individuals. So.
You're absolutely correct. The modules within the new DPP in-service training include everything from defense tactics, proper use and wear of equipment, report writing, wellness. So it's very similar to what we do on the correction side.
Enhanced supervision.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. And lastly, the last time we met, was probably a week or so ago, I asked to make sure that we had the final report from the joint hearings regarding DPP, the final report submission. Want to make sure.
We'll make sure you get that.
All right. I'm going to circle around. Senator Sullivan.
Thank you, and I want to thank you for the report. Our good chairman hit a couple of things that I had written down, and I appreciate that. So we're ahead of ourselves. That's good. But the turnover rate and the vacancy, we see it's really high. But we've seen some improvements in some of our other departments, and we want to continue to try to improve in that area. Is there other things necessary that we need to do? We see the commercials and everything else that are out there, and we want to find ways where we can continue that. I know one of our, the chairman stated that one of our biggest problems is overtime. We don't want people working doubles 7 days a week or 5 days a week. It's a problem, and it's a risk. It's a high risk, and we want to see how we can change that. Is there other things that we can do to entice, bring people in? Because I know that's been a problem for years now.
So we continue to recruit. We actually have an ongoing and continuous recruitment right now for our parole and probation agents. And based on the allotted pens that we have, our vacancies are very low right now. We're down to 6%. Some areas, and I can tell you, for example, the Central Region vacancy rate is 5%. So the vacancy rates are lower. We did put in for the budget for the additional the $5 million for the additional pens that we receive, and that will help. But I think we're seeing significant individuals start to apply for those jobs through the recruitment efforts that we're doing. That's how we're able to have this large graduating class of 35 if they're all successful in completing graduation. And we do have in the hopper right now about another 20 waiting to follow up with that class as well. Additional.
Are we accurate in what we're stating now by number? That where we are, or
as far as the current vacancy, by based on the pens that we are currently allotted, yes, our vacancy is around 6% right now.
So we just want to make sure that, and the changes they sometimes drastically change, and we want to make sure that we're there because in the weeks or so time, it could change. And another thing is the equipment, the body cameras, the things that should be a priority now because it was a tragedy what happened to Detective Martinez. And of course, we don't want that to happen ever again or ever happen. Is the proper training, is there something more we need to do, the body cameras or other things necessary? Are we missing something or is there something more that we need to make sure that we have everything there? Because we don't want to say, okay, we needed this tool, we never had it or anything like that. So something that we could help or assist in any way to try to improve in that area.
So we are working, because we do have to have legislation in order to approve the body cameras because they're in the community. So we are working on that effort and working with the union on that. All of the safety equipment that we have deployed, they are being trained on that. They will get annual training on that and any updates that's needed during the course of the year. One of the things that I think we're doing a lot better is tracking expiration of equipment so that we know that that individual is not using a safety measure that cannot really help them because a vest has expired or OC spray has expired. So we've put in place tracking mechanisms to know when to turn over that equipment and replace it.
No, I appreciate that. I know between you and the union working together, it's a priority and we need to be in the same place.
Absolutely.
I've been in the union for 31 years. I got a little understanding about that, so I can definitely say I understand how it could shake up things and, we're not on the same page, but that's important. And again, that's why we're here. And if we could do more, please let us know. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Now, before we go any further, I know that there are 2 reports that you have that the House has asked you to get back to them within a week. One dealing with the risk assessment tools, as well as your resuming of home visits. Could you please make sure we get those reports as well?
We will share those.
Make sure that we're on point. I know that Montgomery County is, you're getting ready to start the pilot with Montgomery County Police Department?
Correct. Dr. Sophia, what date is that?
We're scheduled to begin on tomorrow. However, we hope that the weather cooperates with us. But barring none of the weather delays, we will
hopefully
be
your
out.
customers are home. So.
That's right, that's right. Well, we're scheduled to begin tomorrow.
All right, so what about the other agencies? Are you guys engaged with the Maryland Chiefs of Police and the Sheriff's Office and Maryland Sheriffs?
So thank you for that question. We did, I did, and I thank Colonel Butler. He did take it before the sheriffs and the sheriffs and chiefs, and we did get an agreement that they would work with us. We did not do a formal MOU with them as of yet, but we have done a formal MOU with Baltimore City, who is where our largest population is. We estimate that as we start to look at some of these cases, their assistance and how they are going to be used is going to be no more than 10 to 15 cases a month, which is very manageable, we hope, but we're still working with them.
I think that's terrific, by the way, and I think obviously I don't need to tell you all this. Safety is paramount, and again, we'd like to take this journey with you as you embark upon this. I know everyone has their own bailiwick and they have to deal with what they're dealing with. But I think as you schedule, if you could. Share those schedules with us. If you need any assistance nudging any of these agencies, let us know. I think at the end of the day, we've got to get back to our home visits. We need to make sure people are safe, but we need to make sure we're not doing that haphazardly. That your agency and the resources you have to date. Have been sufficient. We'd like to see you get back to that, and but in the meantime, in order to get us where we need to get, we need for these agencies to help you out. So a lot of agencies in the state that can help. Hopefully they will. And we'd also like to peruse those. If the analysts could also get a copy of the MOUs once you get them done.
Yes.
Senator Rosepep?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Madam Secretary. Nice to see all of you.
You as well.
A couple of broader questions. So there are no home visits going on right now?
So So there are home visits.
Oh, there are, okay, I'm confused
The home visits that are occurring right now are based on our agreement with the Interstate Compact Council that we have. So absconder visits must continue, or we would have been sanctioned. So our warrant apprehension unit, that is a law enforcement entity, they are commissioned law enforcement officers. They have actually been going out and doing those visits. The other visits that we've had one-on-one, we learned a lot from COVID. So we were able to do virtual visits. And outside of that, have individuals come into the office. So visits are occurring.
But most of them aren't, but most aren't getting home
So
visits now.
the DPP agents are not going out into
Gotcha,
the.
I see. So that was my impression, so I didn't know about the other categories, but, so for the majority of them, so, let's say before COVID, what was the average number or, a number of visits per month or per year? I mean, give me the big picture about before COVID, before this crisis, what was the normal average home visit schedule?
So I think we need to get you that exact information, but I will tell you that's where we got the average of the 10 to 15 when we started talking with local law enforcement about how frequently we would need them in order to go out. But I'll go back and get you that statistical information because I want it to be.
Okay, and you say as during COVID, you switched a bunch over, everything, I guess, during COVID.
Everything went to virtual during COVID.
And after COVID, but before this, what was the procedure?
So they had resumed home visits. That's why Agent Martinez was out in the field.
That's what I thought, so that's what, but I mean, did it go back to the same tempo as it had before COVID?
Same contact standards as before COVID, yes.
So you didn't keep the virtual that you put in during COVID?
No, I think we learned from virtual. There are some that we can do virtual. So depending on the level of supervision.
But so you kept doing some virtual
Yes.
post-COVID? That's what I was trying to understand.
Yes, we did.
I see, okay. If we get some numbers on that,
Okay.
that would be helpful. Second question relates to the risk measurement. There's a risk measurement, give me kind of the short 3-sentence version of what is the risk measurement designed to measure?
I'm gonna let
Our current risk assessment does our static and dynamic risk factors. So the static are things that don't change: criminal history, age, race, things like that. Dynamic, of course, are things like substance use, employment, things of that nature.
And those are designed to measure risk of what?
It measures the predictability of recidivism,
I got
of
you.
reoffense.
Okay. And is part of that risk assessment or a different risk assessment for the danger to the probation officer if they visit them?
No, the risk assessment is for the individual that's being supervised. It's their potential risk to the public.
Society, I understand, and that's the basic point of the agency, but I mean, given the recent experience, and I presume this is not the first bad things ever happened to a probation officer in the United States, is there not some system for measuring risk to the probation officer?
Not specifically to the probation officer. However, one of the proponents of the risk assessment, I have been conducting market research on various risk assessments that are available. Part of the assessment or the return that I want is an assessment of violence, weapons, and sex.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking about. I presume some are much more risky than others, just almost normal spread of human behavior. Gotcha. Okay. Obviously, I think that's a good idea. Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Madam Secretary and Madam Director, speak briefly regarding the security component you have in your offices and your plan long-term regarding.
We have contracted security for all of our offices. That is armed security there. We did come into some challenges with some of the properties that we lease, where the lease owners did not want the armed security in those offices. And then we also have offices that are
And
within.
so what have you done
I'll
regarding
let
that?
Joe negotiate it with them, so I'll let him tell you how we resolve that.
Yeah, so all of the lease properties obviously goes through DGS, so they're, the actual leasor. So we were working, the biggest issue with the armed security that some of the tenants had was the increased liability of having a weapon, as you can imagine. So we've been working with DGS on trying to resolve those terms with the individual offices to either allow it or I believe we're using WAU in some cases. We also, WAU officers as commissioned law enforcement are able to carry a weapon into a facility, so.
Okay, all right. Spell that out for us. Warrant apprehension unit.
Warrant apprehension unit,
Yeah, so if anybody's getting a transcript. All right, cool. So if you continue on your long-term plan with that, I think for your employees and for a comfort level for agents as well as staff in the offices, does the agency plan to continue this long-term? Is this going to be a part of your staffing?
We have,
Again, from the appropriator standpoint.
I believe there's money in the FY26 budget to continue armed security guards.
Okay. All right. Lastly, you mentioned ACA in your report. And I think you mentioned, you said there was, the accreditation was pending on, could you repeat that portion?
So APA, the American Parole and Probation, they were set to release their guidelines this year. And we were happy to receive them because we want to use them also as guidelines for us. And in conferring with the president of APA, they are now with the American Correctional Association so that they can review them, provide feedback for them, and do the auditing component and accreditation of those guidelines before they issue them to everyone.
Appreciate that. And APA has a standard for roughly 70 cases per agent, correct?
Intensive is about 20 to 1,
Okay.
50 to 1 for moderate, and about 100 to 1 for low.
Right, and there were two, I think the analyst stated that there were two areas that are Capital Region and West were above the average.
So I think,
You're correct. So we do have on the 21st of this month, we have 37 people that are slated to enter to the academy. Of those persons, 14 of them are for Capital Region. I don't exactly remember how many is going to West, but we did target our recruitment efforts in those two regions. So that should make a big difference for the shortfalls in those regions.
if I can also, we have the $5 million in the budget for additional pins. One of the things we're going to do is, we have these pins, is identify the different regions where there's the greatest need to ensure that pin placement goes into the sections where we can reduce the caseload the greatest.
We appreciate that, and if you could also, Madam Secretary and Director, make sure that we, have us walk along with you to ensure that those regions are being covered. And how many academies do you have scheduled for this year, FY25? I'm sorry, calendar year 25.
Sure. There are 2 agent academies. However, I'm currently working on expanding our academy staff so that we can have an academy quarterly.
Cool. That's
I would
great.
just say currently our academy staff is about 5 persons. I'm increasing that to 10.
Are you rotating those additional 5? If you're pulling folks for your academy staff, so are you rotating? Are you? I guess in other words, are you training the trainers, right?
Correct.
Are you getting staff that you can rotate them in as necessary? Work picks up in a region. You may not be able to release those folks if they're not full-time. Are you talking full-time at the academy, or you're talking folks that you can bring in?
Both. So 10 full-time persons at the academy, but we also have adjunct trainers that work around the different regions.
Okay, all right. So those 10 that you're looking to, the additional 5 you're looking to add to the academy, are you going to be able to supplement those, right? You're going to be able to, where are you pulling them from?
Currently, 6 of them already are funded and positioned at the academy. So I'm pulling 4 more in. And what we have done is looked at our staffing alignments across the state and made some adjustments there.
Okay, so we're making sure we're not missing anything, right?
Correct?
All right. Any other questions? Thank you very much. We look forward to that report. If you could, is it done?
Not quite yet, in the next couple of days.
Okay, all right. We're anxious. We're anxiously awaiting. So great to see you all. Thank you. That concludes the hearing. Next up, we will have Department of Juvenile Services. I'm sorry. We have two witnesses. I'm sorry. Sorry about that. David McDonald and Carlos Herrera. Mr. McDonald?
Yes, I'm Mr. McDonald.
Is Mr.
Yeah, Mr. Carlos couldn't make it today, but I have a copy of his testimony.
Okay, so on the testimony sheet, we have that you all will be testifying orally. If you have something written, if you can make sure we get a copy of that as well. All right, you have 2 minutes.
Good afternoon, Senators. My name is Agent David McDonald, and I'm a proud member of ASME Local 365. I serve as a senior agent in the sex offender unit at the Gaithersburg Field Office in Montgomery County. Today, I am here to share urgent concerns regarding excessive caseloads, chronic staffing shortages, and insufficient resources that directly impact our ability to protect the public. Currently in my office, there are only 4 agents assigned to supervise over 633 sex offenders. Personally, I manage a caseload of 187 individuals. Our challenges are compounded by operational inefficiencies due to lack of clerical staff. Agents must spend at least 8 hours each day out of the week performing administrative duties, including answering the phones. That takes us away from our crucial field supervision. Furthermore, the office has just 4 duty vehicles for over 20 agents. This forces many of us to use our personal vehicles for home visits and field work, creating a serious security risk. We respectfully urge the legislature to fully fund the Division of Parole and Probation by increasing agent and clerical staff and expanding resources and providing more duty vehicles. We understand it is a tough budget year, but we encourage the legislators to raise revenues on those wealthy individuals who can afford to pay their fair share. Your support is essential to ensuring the safety of Maryland's communities. Thank you for your time and attention.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Senator Rosepet.
I have a quick question on the clerical support issue. So in your office, how many parole officers are there, probation officers, and how many non-officers are there?
It's approximately about, I would say, 25 agents.
25 agents, and how many non-agent support staff?
There's none.
0.
At this point in time, no.
There used to be?
There used to be in the past, yes.
And when
How
you
many? How many?
It used to be 1 person,
One?
yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yes,
Appreciate
sir.
it.
And you said 4 vehicles.
Yes, currently.
Thank you.
All right.
That's your testimony.
This is
Are
a
you
copy
gonna-
of the other agent's testimony.
Okay, you're going to read that or just hand it to us?
Yes, so I'm just going to hand it to you.
Okay, all right, thank you very
Okay,
much.
all right. Yeah, just pass it this way.
Thank you very much. Stay safe. Appreciate your time. All right, sorry about that. That will conclude Department of Public Safety and Correctional Services Community Supervision. Next up will be the Department of Juvenile Services. And Madam Secretary, before you leave, I need to talk to you about something offline. I'll give you a call. Thank you. And our analysts will get us started. Oh, wait a second.
All right.
Damn. Wait for everybody to click.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair and committee. My name is Madeline Miller, and today I'll be presenting the DLS budget analysis for the Department of Juvenile Services. In fiscal 2026, the department's budget increases by $22.6 million to $369.3 million. Roughly 45% of that growth is attributable to increased personnel costs. Discussion of the department's Managing for Results data begins on page 4 and continues through page 19. Though DJS is tasked with supervising youth in the juvenile justice system, in recent years, it has also engaged in activities aimed at preventing youths from entering or re-entering that system. Exhibit 1 on page 4 describes entities and programs that receive funds through DJS and are designed to take a community-based approach to preventing youth involvement with the juvenile justice system. These activities include funding the operations of ROCA, administering the Thrive Academy, funding enhanced services for youth, and participating in Safer, Stronger Together with the Department of Human Services and the Department of Public Safety and Correctional Services. Safer, Stronger Together, or SST, was previously referred to as the Community Investment Initiative. Juvenile arrest data is provided in Exhibit 2 on page 6. Total arrests are down 38.6% over the 5-year period, though arrests increased 11.9% between 2022 and 2023. Arrests and referrals from school resource officers account for over 90% of the complaints made to DJS. Complaints are written statements that allege a youth has committed one or more delinquent acts or is a runaway, truant, or ungovernable and may be subject to juvenile court dispositions. Other sources of complaints to DJS include transfers from the adult court system, complaints from citizens, and technical violations of probation. Monthly complaints to DJS are shown in Exhibit 3 on page 7. Complaints may also originate as a child in need of supervision petition. The department tends to receive fewer complaints in July, August, and September. DJS received 14,245 complaints in fiscal 2024, a 15% increase compared with 2023. These complaints were for 9,195 youths. After receiving a complaint, a DJS intake officer must make an intake decision. That officer may decide that a complaint is disproved or otherwise resolved, that the youth should be informally diverted from court through a pre-court supervision agreement, or to formally authorize the state's attorney to petition the juvenile court for a hearing. Exhibit 4 on page 9 displays the total number of complaints received by DJS over the past decade and the share of possible dispositions made in each fiscal year. Compared to the 18,906 complaints in fiscal 2019, the last year of pre-pandemic data, the number of complaints in fiscal 2024 was 24.7% lower. Approximately 57.8% of cases in fiscal 24 were either resolved at intake or referred for informal intervention. These 6,065 formal cases accounted for 42.2% of dispositions. Cases of this type rose 41.9% from fiscal 23, though they remained 17.7% lower than in fiscal 2019. Fiscal 25 year-to-date data suggests that there could be a decrease in all cases compared to fiscal 24, though this change may be overstated as the year-to-date data includes July, August, and September. Exhibit 5 on page 10 provides the non-residential population trends. This population of youth includes youth receiving informal supervision, youth on probation, and youth receiving aftercare programming following discharge from a residential program. Between fiscal 2015 and 2022, the non-residential caseload decreased almost 70%. Since fiscal 2022, non-residential caseloads have risen 10.5% to an average daily population of approximately 1,676 youth in fiscal 24. DJS limits the number of youths committed to its facilities by diverting youths to alternative to detention programs, such as community detention with or without electronic monitoring, evening reporting centers, and by providing shelter care when youth are unable to return home. Exhibit 6 on page 12 shows the average daily population for each of these categories. The Pre-Adjudication Coordination and Transition Center is a specialized evening reporting center in Baltimore City. For the youth who are detained, Exhibit 7 on page 13 describes the average daily population for youth in detention predisposition, the youth who are waiting pending placement, and the adult court authorized detention population. Since overall complaints rose 74.5% between fiscal 21 and 24, and the courts have been fully operational, the detained average daily population rose to 265.2 youth in fiscal 24. Average daily population is expected to decrease slightly in fiscal 2025 to 261 youths as fewer complaints receive formal case dispositions. Based on fiscal 25 year-to-date data, the adult court population now accounts for 61.7% of the detained population. Now I'll turn to Exhibit 8 on page 14. Compared to pre-pandemic levels in fiscal 2019, the average length of stay for the predisposition, pending placement, and adult court authorized populations have each increased, particularly for those pending placement, for which it's increased 78.2%. As average daily population for pending placement youth increased 103.9% between fiscal 22 and 24, average length of stay for that population increased by 30%. Average length for the adult court authorized youth has also increased since fiscal 2022. In fiscal 24, adult court authorized youth had an average length of stay of 122 days, approximately 7.2% higher than in fiscal 2022. An exhibit with information related to the department's committed residential population appears on page 16. The committed population continued to fall in fiscal 22 to approximately 133 youths, but rose by 11.6% in fiscal 24, with almost all of the growth coming from placements in state-operated facilities. State-operated placements are programs at facilities that are operated and owned by DJS. Even as average daily population rises in fiscal 25, the utilization of state-operated placements remains 29.7% lower than in fiscal 2019. Per diem placements are programs operated by private providers, and the state pays for only the number of days that a youth is actually placed in the program. Since fiscal 2015, the private per diem average daily population has fallen by over 77, almost 78%, to 158.8 youth in fiscal 25 year-to-date data. The last topic of the performance data is the department's strategic reentry measures and recidivism data. The reentry process is managed by regional reentry teams who oversee each youth's return to their community. After the youth has been in the community for 30 days, a DJS reentry specialist follows up with the youth and their family to ensure that the youth has accessed all needed services, has successfully re-enrolled in school, and remains in stable and suitable housing. The outcomes of the follow-up visits are documented and reported to the department as shown in Exhibit 10 on page 18. DJS only reported 3 measures for fiscal 24 due to insufficient data collection. Of these 3 measures, only one showed improvement, which was the percentage of youth in DJS facilities completing program units in education and workforce, which increased 7.7 percentage points. While strategic reentry plan measures detail efforts to better ease a youth's transition back into their community, it's the recidivism data that measures which provide a greater understanding of how many youths return to the juvenile justice system. Recidivism data is published in the department's data resource guide, which is due on February 1st and was published on that date. It was not available at the time of this analysis drafting. The Department of Legislative Services asked that DJS comment on why there was insufficient data collection on strategic reentry plan measures in fiscal 24 and whether similar issues will persist in its next MFR submission. The department should also provide information on its rearrest, readjudication, and recommitment rates within 1, 2, and 3 years of release from DJS supervision. I'll now turn to a discussion of the department's expenditure in the current fiscal year. The legislative appropriation included $14.6 million to support the operations of the Safer, Stronger Together initiative, the Thrive Academy, and the Enhanced Services Continuum. However, cost containment actions approved by the Board of Public Works in July 24 reduced the department's general fund appropriation by $3 million for these programs. The allowance also includes 7 proposed deficiencies, which add a net $876,000 in general funds for the department. $4.8 million will be used to fund overtime expenses for direct care staff at detention and treatment center facilities. Approximately $1.5 million in contractual services and equipment costs are added to fund security-related IT upgrades. Just over $536,000 in general funds are removed, funding the transfer of a position and funds to the Governor's Office of Crime Prevention and Policy, prorated for half of the fiscal year. $800,000 and $1.5 million in contractual services for residential and non-residential per diem costs are also removed, and $2.6 million in contractual services are removed associated with the implementation of the Maryland Total Human Services Integrated Network, or MD-THINK. MD-THINK hosts the Child, Juvenile, and Adult Management System, known as CJAMS. Critical to the department's operational capabilities is its case management information system. DJS has used a client database referred to as ASSIST since calendar 1999, and previously expected CJAMS to replace that case management functionality by the end of fiscal '24. The department reports that CJAMS lacked functionalities that its frontline staff require, however. And with that planned deficiency, the fiscal '25 working appropriation and allowance include no funding for replacing ASSIST. DJS should comment on how its data systems will interact with CJAMS in the future and whether it plans to pursue upgrades to or replacement of ASSIST. As shown in Exhibit 11 on page 22, approximately 70% of the allowance is for DJS's personnel expenses. Youth programming, including the purchase of care services, and youth education programming accounts for approximately 14% of the allowance. And the remaining funds, approximately 16.5%, are allocated to contractual services, supplies and equipment, and other expenses. DJS's budget increases, as I previously mentioned, by $22.6 million. Exhibit 12, which appears on page 22 and at the top of, on page 23 and the top of page 24, provides additional detail on the factors driving this change. The allowance includes $1.6 million for DJS to replace programmable logic controllers at 3 of its facilities. The allowance also continues funding of preventative initiatives, including the Enhanced Services Continuum, SST, and the Thrive Academy. In fiscal '25, the Enhanced Services Continuum initially received $7 million, and it receives $5.6 million following the BPW cost containment actions. Unlike SST, which is in partnership with other departments, and the Thrive Academy, which has been subject of a report describing its spending plan and success indicators, the Enhanced Services Continuum funding can be used for much broader purposes. The allowance includes $11.2 million for this purpose. And given that there's not yet been time to demonstrate the effectiveness of the program, especially considering startup delays due to BPW reductions, DLS recommends reducing the general fund appropriation for the Enhanced Services Continuum by $4.2 million to the level previously authorized by the General Assembly in fiscal '25. The allowance also grows by $3 million, and for the purposes of reopening a facility on the Victor Cullen Center campus. This facility would serve as an adolescent drug treatment center for youth struggling with substance abuse to receive a treatment alternative to detention. DJS does not currently operate a similar facility and has reported that it does not yet determined how it would provide substance abuse treatment services at such a facility. The department's 2024 Facilities Master Plan was published on December 31st, 2024, and does not describe this facility's condition or include it in its list of proposed projects or recommended actions. DLS recommends deleting the general fund appropriation of $3 million to reopen the Catoctin Treatment Center due to its absence from the facilities master plan. Personnel data can be found on page 26. There were 227.5 vacancies as of December 31st, approximately 64 above the budgeted turnover rate. Of those vacant positions, 66.5 have been vacant for over a year. We're asked in its testimony that DJS comment discuss the impact of its high vacancy rate above 10% on agency operations, program outcomes, and youth safety. On pages 27 and 28, Exhibit 13 and 14 show the monthly vacancy rates for community and facility direct care staff between July 22 and 2024. Vacancy rates for both have improved, but they've particularly improved for the residential direct care staff. The department's overall vacancy rate is lower in fiscal '25 than in 2024. The $16.1 million in overtime expenditures in the fiscal '25 allowance may be insufficient considering recent growth rates in overtime spending. The first issue appears on page 29. DJS is the second largest youth placing agency for youth who require an out-of-home placement. The department places youth, or the detained youth pending placement are one of the populations for which DJS places youth out of home. The department also places youth in community-based programs, hospitalizations, and in family homes. Language in the fiscal 2025 budget bill restricted $50,000 until DJS submitted a report on wait times before youth receive a community-based placement, hospitalization, family home placement, or non-community-based placement. In calendar 2024, 355 youth required a placement by DJS. Average length of stay was reported by jurisdiction for calendar 2019 through 2024 in the submitted report, with Somerset, Cecil, Caroline, Allegheny, Somerset, and Allegheny counties having the longest average length of stay in each consecutive respective year. The department provided the requested information, and DLS therefore recommends the release of withheld funds and will process a letter to this effect if no objections are raised during the budget hearings. As discussed in the performance analysis section, average length of stay for detained youth pending placement has increased in recent fiscal years, and to reduce the amount of time youth spend waiting for placement to residential treatment facility in fiscal 25, the department reports that it opened 3 pending placement units within BCJJC and the Cheltenham Youth Detention Center. Youth who are moved to the pending placement units can start to receive their evidence-based therapies so that their time spent waiting in detention center post-court is better aligned with their treatment service plans. This is also possible due to lower youth capacity within the detention centers. DJS should provide the number of youth who spent time in the pending placement units and discuss how DJS delivers treatment services to these youths in its testimony today. The second and final issue can be found on page 30. Language in the fiscal 25 budget bill restricted $100,000 until the department submitted a report containing its facilities master plan. The submitted plan contains information about the current and planned capacity of DJS residential programs, a funding proposal for the NYRC, institutional data about the buildings and sites managed by the department, and inventory information. The submitted FMP is closely aligned with the department's capital improvement plan, which includes $1.15 million in general obligation bond funding for the NYRC project in fiscal 26 and will be discussed further in the capital budget analysis for the department. The department provided the requested plan to the committees, and DLS therefore recommends the release of withheld funds. We will also process a letter to this effect if no objections are raised during the budget hearings. Recommended actions are listed on page 31. That concludes my presentation, and I'd be happy to take any questions from the committee at this time.
Thank you very much. Any questions for our analysts? Seeing none, Mr. Deputy Secretary, come on up. And your team. For members who are not aware, the Secretary is under the weather today, so he will not be with us. So we will be having the budget hearing today. We will have a follow-up session as soon as we get the date squared away on the OPECA report, as well as the treatment center. So today is budget only, so. Come on up, please state your name for the record as you speak, and you can proceed.
So good afternoon, Chairman Jackson and members of the subcommittee. It's an honor to be here with you today. I am Tiffany Johnson, Deputy Secretary of Support Services. I bring regards from Secretary Giraldi, who is unfortunately sick today and is unable to be here. At the table with me is Michael DiBattista, our department's Chief Financial Officer, and Kara Annison, our Director of Legislation, Policy, and Reform. I would like to thank our assigned analyst, Ms. Madeline Miller, for her thorough analysis. The Department of Juvenile Services remains committed to advancing reforms that enhance public safety, promote fairness, and improve efficiency through direct community engagement. Over the past year, DJS has strengthened partnerships with local communities to support our youth returning home and those receiving services within the community. By expanding community-based and facility programming, DJS aims to hold our youth accountable while fostering public safety. Our focus remains on reducing recidivism, promoting educational attainment, workforce development, civic engagement, and other positive youth development opportunities that have been shown to reduce recidivism and improve outcomes. So I'll start with community enhancements. Rebuilding the community-based service continuum is our top priority. And to lead this effort, DJS created and hired an assistant secretary for community resources to develop and expand our local service networks. With an $850,000 federal grant, DJS is conducting a service scan, identifying gaps, evaluating programs, and creating a stakeholder feedback process. While this process is underway, DJS has already taken steps to strengthen early intervention efforts, expand our Thrive Academy, and increase workforce development opportunities. In response to identified service gaps, DJS expanded partnerships with community conferencing groups to provide diversion services at the system's front end. We are also working with the Governor's Office of Crime Control and Prevention, the Governor's Office for Children, and local management boards to align funding and programs to fill these gaps. To address the urgent issue of gun violence among youth under our supervision, many of whom are victims, DJS launched the Thrive Academy in September of 2023. This intensive community-based program began in 4 counties that accounted for 82% of youth involved in gun violence in FY 2023. Early outcomes are promising. Fewer than 2% of Thrive youth have been gun violence victims. None have been homicide victims, and 4 out of 5 have not been arrested for a gun offense. Thrive's credible messengers have repeatedly de-escalated conflicts, preventing retaliatory violence. Thrive Academy received the 2024 Council of Juvenile Justice Administrators Inspiration Innovation Award, recognizing its groundbreaking impact. The program will undergo an independent evaluation by the University of Pennsylvania, a national expert in gun violence reduction funded by the Casey and Pull-Up Foundations. Statewide expansion is underway, with DJS providing technical assistance to grassroots groups interested in serving as life coaches. The first expression of interest closed in December of 2024.
Madam Assistant Secretary, I'm gonna stop you right here. So we have your written response, and I understand the circumstance we're in because the secretary is not here today. So I'm not gonna have you read this entire package in front of you. So we're gonna take some questions. If you have any bulleted items that you'd like to speak to us in response to what the analysts spoke to. So what I would like is for you all to speak to that versus to read this. We have a copy of this.
Go ahead.
All right, we're happy to take
Or
questions.
you can go to the responses.
Oh, our responses? Okay.
Yes.
Yep.
So we'll start with page 19 of the analysis. DJS was asked to comment on why there was insufficient data collection on our strategic reentry plan measures with fiscal 2024. The insufficient data collection on strategic reentry plan measures in fiscal 2024 was primarily due to the low completion rates for the post-discharge reentry checklist, which serves as the primary source for our reentry metrics. To address this, DJS Community Services and research staff have implemented measures to improve data tracking, including the addition of reports in the Safe Measures platform to monitor completion rates and enhance accountability. On page 21, DJS should comment on how its data systems will interact with CJAMs in the future and whether we plan to pursue upgrades to replace Assist. DJS remains actively engaged with the Department of Information Technology, DO-IT, MD Think, and CJAMS representatives to ensure seamless bidirectional data sharing related to youth and families between DJS systems and CJAMS, both now and in the future.
Before you move to the next one, is there a particular, do you have a timeline on your progress with Do-IT? Or could you have the agency keep us abreast as you're moving through this timeline, as we're moving forward?
Absolutely. We'll keep you informed of our timeline. We're awaiting a sprint report. We should be getting that any time soon.
All right, thank you.
So on page 25, we were to comment on, given that there has not been time to demonstrate the effectiveness of this program, especially considering the startup delays due to the BPW reductions. They recommend reducing the general fund appropriation for the enhanced services continuum by $4.2 million to the level previously authorized by the General Assembly in fiscal year 2025. DJS respectfully opposes the recommendation to reduce the general fund appropriation for the enhanced services continuum by $4.2 million. The demand for expanded community-based services continues to grow, and key stakeholders, including the courts, prosecutors, law enforcement, families, advocates, and local jurisdictions, have consistently called on DJS to strengthen the service continuum. These funds are critical to continuing that work and ensuring youth access innovative, effective, and evidence-based support. One of the core components of many of the services we seek to expand is our credible messengers, which already has strong data demonstrating its effectiveness. DJS has invested significant effort in building up these programs, and early outcomes confirm their impact, such as Thrive Academy. Since launch, no participant has been a victim of homicide. Nearly 4 out of 5 have remained free of gun-related charges. And access, out of the 54 youth enrolled since April of 2024, 3 youth have been rearrested, and all of them did appear for court.
So have you shared that information? Has the agency shared that information
With?
with DLS?
Yes, we have.
That was reported in the
Okay,
Thrive Academy report.
all right.
Just skip to the next.
Right. Also, on page 25, DLS recommended deleting the general fund appropriation of $3 million to reopen Catoctin Treatment Center due to its absence from the department's 2024 facility master plan. DJS respectfully opposes the deletion of the $3 million general fund appropriation intended to support residential substance use treatment services for youth. While the Catoctin Treatment Center is not included in our facility master's plan, the agency recognizes the critical need for expanding inpatient treatment beds, a need that has been echoed by our key stakeholders, including the state's attorneys across the state. DJS does remain committed to our partnering with the Maryland Department of Health and other relevant entities to identify viable options for bringing residential substance use treatment services online. This funding is essential to ensuring that the youth with significant treatment needs can access appropriate care. On page 26, DJS should discuss the impact of its high vacancy rate, above 10%, on agency operations, program outcomes, and youth safety. As referenced in Exhibit 5 of the analysis, non-residential caseloads dropped by 69.7% between 2015 and 2022. However, there has not been a comparable reduction in the number of community case management positions. As new or modified community-based programming for youth is implemented, DJS continues to assess appropriate caseloads for case management positions. To the extent that surplus positions are identified, case management or any other classification for those positions will be realigned to best address positive youth outcomes for youth and safety for both staff and youth. On page 29, DJS agrees with releasing the funds for submitting the out-of-home placement report. Also on page 29, DJS was asked to comment on the number of youth who have spent time in the pending placement units and discuss how DJS delivers treatment services to these youth. So since opening in July of 2023, the pending placement units have maintained an average daily population of approximately 24 youth, with about 14 being at Baltimore City Juvenile Justice Center and 10 at Cheltenham. As of January 31st, 2025, 351 unique youth have been housed in the pending placement unit, with 33 currently listed as residing there. Since the program's inception, youth in the pending placement unit have received an average of 4.1 hours of treatment per week. We are gradually increasing the weekly treatment hours for pending placement youth as we onboard additional behavioral health staff. For example, as of January 31st, 2025, youth currently on the unit have received an average of 4.9 weekly treatment hours. Treatment services include individual and family dialectical behavioral therapy, otherwise known as DBT sessions, as appropriate, as well as psychoeducational groups with clinicians such as forward thinking and victim awareness.
Before you move forward, quick question. So how many total number of youth? Is it 355?
355 is the number of youth that have gone through the program. 351 have gone through it.
Okay.
And then the numbers above it are the 24 youth is the average population. We have 14 beds available at BCJJC and 10 at Cheltenham.
And what's the timeline for them? So I think I'm asking from the perspective that I believe while they're pending treatment, this does not go toward their time served.
It does.
It does if they're in the pending.
If they're in the,
placement
if they're in
the
that,
pending
if they're in
placement.
that particular unit, so.
Yeah, then those hours are counted when they go to Victor Cullen,
Got
Green
you.
Ridge. Those are a one-to-one count.
Got
If a
you.
young person is going to one of the private providers, we've had conversations with our private providers to talk to them about the services that they're getting, and then they're using those when they're creating their individual treatment plans at those private providers. We've actually seen the length of stay at our private providers also decrease when we've started these pending placement units.
Yeah, it's very, it's important to make sure that we get as many through as possible.
Absolutely.
And to ensure that if these young folks are in some sort of custody, that those time.
Absolutely, and I think that's why we started these units, and we've really seen young people go to treatment and be ready for treatment. So it's really improved the detention centers, and it's also improved as young people are transitioning into the treatment programs, because they're not just sitting and waiting for a month to get there. They're actually already starting to earn things and work on new skills.
Thank you. I did. Okay.
And on page 30, DJS agrees with releasing the funds for providing the facility master plan to committees in DLS. And that was our last comment we were to provide a response on. And I do want to thank you all for your time, and we are happy to answer any further questions.
All right, thank you. Senator Roosevelt.
Thank you. That's a lot. Going to the two proposed budget cuts by DLS. One is the $4.2 million. I'm a little, you guys do so much and call them so many different things.
That's fine.
What exactly is the $4.2 million intended to be spent on?
So that's for enhancing the service continuum, and we are looking to expand 2 programs that use credible messenger mentoring. So one is what we're calling the Thrive Passport. So those are for young people that are on current supervision, that are at a high risk level, but might need an extra gear to help them if they're not being successful in their current probation. And then for young people that are waiting their trial and are charged as adults. So that's the Access program. So that would what the expansion dollars would be for.
Give me a little more detail.
Yep.
What happens?
Yeah,
Exactly. What are they doing?
sorry, the Credible Messenger mentoring program, similar to Thrive. So they're paired with a credible messenger who.
Well, who's a credible messenger?
So they're people who've had lived experience that are from that community. And so they're paired with a credible messenger who helps them develop a life plan. So whatever goals that young person has, making sure that they're gaining employment, going to school, providing whatever needs they have. If there's safety risks in the community, addressing those types of things. And then they are helping them enroll in school, re-enroll in school.
I got you. So it's kind of like a non-social worker. It's kind of like someone who's lived the life instead of studied the
Exactly.
life and talked about the life. I got it.
Exactly.
Peer support.
Exactly. Very similar to peer support,
Okay.
yeah. And so, I'm
And
sorry, go
that's
ahead.
one or that's two? That's both of them?
That's both of them. It's just for 2 different populations. It's the same type of program targeted at 2 different
So
populations.
how many kids can you serve for $4.2 million?
Do we have? We can get you the number.
Please ask you. That'd be great. Send
Yep.
us a question.
In person or virtual?
It's in person. It's all in person, and they're able to access young people 24 hours a day. So often, right now, we're using it for young people that are at the highest risk of violence. So sometimes credible messengers get a phone call at 2 o'clock in the morning after something has happened, and they're able to call their credible messenger, have a conversation. Yeah,
I got it.
and we'll get you the,
That'd be great if you get us
Yep.
the data. If I could go back and forth with the analysts for a minute. So why did you propose cutting this?
We propose cutting this portion we did not propose deleting all of the funds for this. We proposed funding it at the level that was provided for 1 year of spending and what was originally intended for fiscal '25. Fiscal '25 is a bit lower with cost and human actions. The Thrive Academy, we did not recommend cutting funds for that. So we did not recommend cutting funds for youth at the highest likelihood of being engaged with gun violence specifically. We recommended this in light of budget constraints elsewhere and without evidence yet from the department about how many youth it has been able to reach in a full fiscal year, about the impacts towards crime prevention in the state or for preventing recidivism.
I thought the data that they referred to, that they said
So they have
actually
they have
didn't
credible
that data.
messengers through the Thrive Academy,
Right.
but the Thrive Academy is only dedicated or is only meant to support youth of a particular category.
Right.
With their enhanced services
Right, I know.
continuum, it would be a fundamentally different population of youth.
It's different people, but it's essentially the same program, isn't it? Or
It's similar.
similar, okay.
Yeah.
So what I'm trying to understand, but I thought on the Thrive Academy itself, which they've been doing, maybe they got off to a slow start, but they're doing, they did quote data about the effect of the folks they were serving.
Yes. And we did not recommend reducing funding for the Thrive Academy.
Okay, let me, if I may, Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I want to double down on this. I'm trying to understand why, if they have an approach, they've started it, it seems to be working. I guess I'd say that's as strong as I'd be willing to say it, based on the data. And they propose expanding it to other folks.
They have 7 million to do that. They just don't have, we're just proposing not a full 11.2.
Well, then that's what I want to dig down on. So you were proposing 11 million for this expansion. Is that correct?
For the first service, for the continuum expansion. Yes, that includes more than just,
If we refer to,
Let's look at this chart.
after the proposed budget change chart, I think it's on page 24.
24, yeah.
And the top of page 25, they may also use the enhanced services continuum for services like credible messengers, but also for diversion programming, reentry supports, post-dispositional community programming, multi-systemic therapy, and their detention diversion alternative program. So those things, we don't have a full accounting for how much money will be used to support how many youth of different types.
I understand. That's sort of the question I asked. I understand.
It is in progress, like.
But the increase is a total of 11.
The increase is a total of 4.2 for the enhanced services continuum. But it's actually a bit higher than that because there's an annualization of the program. If you look at page 23, you'll see there's $5,555,000 for the growth in the program. That reflects both the annualization of, or returning the money that the Board of Public Works cut for fiscal '25 and the $4.2 million growth.
Okay, so it's 4.7. But I'm sorry to be thick on this. But the math, the increase from the previous year proposed by the administration is more or less 4 or more or less 7? Or more or less 11?
4.2 billion.
That's the increase.
Correct.
Yes, so the first year funding, fiscal '25, $7 million was planned and approved by the legislature.
Gotcha, I understand.
Board of Public Works cut 1.6
I
or
understand.
so.
So the budget
allowance
restores that.
restores it to 7 and adds an additional 4.2. DLS is recommending cutting the 4.2.
I understand. Now I understand the math. I have another question, but I'll let my colleagues go first. Yeah, I want to come back after the other senators.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for the information. Just got a couple questions, real quick. And I'm gonna go back to page 11, and then I'm gonna shoot to 29, so I'll let you get to both of them real quick. So one of the problems I've seen and we've heard it's ongoing is electric monitoring. And how it just seems like it's not working. Because you're putting people on this program, which with or without community detention, but they're still having this type of, I guess, you're aware of where they are, where they should be, and that's not happening. There's more crime, and I think they're finding out juvenile crime and the crime that they're committing, they're still wearing the monitors. And so I just like to know where we are with that. It's good that they're having monitors, they committed a crime, but they're out committing more crime with the monitors. So is there a possibility that where we are by number, if we could get them, would be a help to us to see, is there something more we can do to help that out and assist that? Because again, it seems to be an ongoing problem. And also on page 29, it seems that there was a report that was asked and it did not contain all the request information on the top of page 29.
Oh, that was,
It was
from 2 years ago.
2 years ago?
Yeah.
Okay.
And so the report was requested again.
When it was requested again, the information was submitted as requested.
As requested?
Yes.
Okay, so they get everything. So that's a good thing. All right. And there was one more thing. Oh, yeah. My one problem, I know the Charles H. Hickey School, which is around a community. And I've heard a lot of complaints about that. And I'm just wondering if you're aware of that, and there's anything being done about that. Because being detained in that area and being around a residential area, it could cause, which I'm hearing, problems. And there's been theft in some of the areas, so I don't know if you're hearing that, but I'm letting you know I am. And I have some of the reports that I've seen, and I want to know if there's something more that you're doing about that.
Absolutely, that's a great question. This is the first I'm hearing about that, but we really value our relationship with the community there and being able to be strong partners with young people. You know, we're really trying to encourage people from the community to come into the facility to teach kids new skills. So that's something the department is really committed to. So I'd be happy to stop by your office and get the concerns that you've raised, and we could definitely reach back out to the community to make sure those are addressed, Senator.
And I think that's all I have for you.
Okay, and we'll definitely get you the answers to your question on the electronic monitoring. Again, that primarily is used for young people that are pending adjudication.
Yes.
And so I think the department we talked about that access program a little bit about using credible messengers there. And we're really trying to think about, that's just monitoring. And so how do we provide some services to young people while they're waiting? Because we know young people sometimes wait some time before going to court. So we can definitely get you data.
I apologize. And I know that it's to monitor them by time. If they can go here, they can go there, which is fine. But at times, they're not here or there, they're anywhere, they're everywhere.
Yeah.
And we just want to know, is that being corrected in some ways, making sure that they're appearing that. So I think
Exactly.
it's a priority.
And with the new law, you know, we have to, as soon as an infraction happens now, a violation happens, the court has to know the next day. And so we're in compliance with that. And actually, we've taken a number of legislators on tours of the headquarters there, and we'd be happy to arrange for the subcommittee to come maybe in the interim to check out the facility.
Appreciate that.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
I'd like to talk about the Victor Cullen Center, or now it's the Catoctin Treatment Center, which has been closed since 2019. DLS is saying that the extent and scope of the renovations haven't been determined yet, and the proposed projects or recommended actions are not fully defined yet. Can you tell us a little bit about the scope of the demand? What is the population of juveniles that need drug treatment, drug counseling, and of all of the juveniles in your system, what % of them have a drug addiction challenge? And how are they being served elsewhere?
That's a great question. Okay. So first, the Catoctin Treatment Center is on the grounds of Victor Cullen, and it was a residential treatment center until 2019, and it was run by the Washington County Health Department. And then the program stopped, and so the funds in the budget are for starting another residential substance use treatment program. I think the department understands that we continue to hear from the state's attorneys, from the court, a need for young people that might not have high chronicity, but need substance use treatment. And so I think that this is what this is trying to do, to be able to have a program or a treatment program where we're able to put kids in instead of detaining them or putting them into a committed program. DJS itself operates a number of programs, Victor Cullen, the Green Ridge Youth Center, and Backbone. All of those have substance use treatment as a component of the program. So youth that we identify as a high need are able to get substance use treatment. It's an evidence-based program called 7 Challenges that we provide to young people there. But I think that these funds are specifically for a residential treatment program for the population. Recently, the health department added some additional beds at Mountain Manor, thank you. Mountain Manor, the secretary will laugh because I correct him every time on that. That is a small number of beds for boys that they've just expanded to girls, but I think we're still seeing, particularly in the Capital South region, a high need for youth with that are using fentanyl. And I think, that's something that's really concerning, and we want to make sure that we have the services available to young people.
Aren't the young people in these programs automatically tested, drug tested on an ongoing basis?
If a youth has a high substance, is identified as someone with substance use, yes, they are tested.
What happens when they fail?
A number of things can happen. We alert the court, we can change what their treatment is, we can change their recommendation, we can put them in, work with their counselor, work with their case manager to help provide better support so that they're able to be successful.
But I think what I hear you saying is if they're consistently failing, there's no residential treatment center or inadequate residential treatment
There is
center.
a limited amount of substance use treatment centers in the state.
Thank you.
Senator Lewis-Young, just so you know, when we meet with the secretary, that's one of our 2 subject matters, Catoctin as well as the OPECA report. So, before I go to Senator Roosevelt, I wanted to ask one question. I think I may have just forgotten it, but we'll come back to it. Senator Roosevelt.
Okay, that's fine.
Can't read my own writing.
No, I believe me, I feel your pain. It was a good idea when I wrote it down. You talked about low recidivism rate among folks who've gone through Thrive Academy. I think you referred to that. Do you have data on not recidivism of folks who have been through juvenile services, but crimes committed by folks who at one time or another have been through juvenile services? So if we were taking a snapshot today of everyone who got arrested for, give me a category, assault, theft, murder, whatever, give me any category. Does the state have data that says, oh, we know this kid because they were in juvenile services 5 years ago?
We're part of the longitudinal data system where that's tracked,
Okay.
yes.
Could you get us whatever, not that you do something special on that, but I presume somebody analyzes this. I just like to get my head around, how many folks who are committing crimes today you've touched at one point.
Okay.
I believe anything. It could be 5%, it could be 95%. I have no idea.
Yeah, I'm happy to get that for you.
That'd be great. Thank you.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
Mr. Chairman.
Appreciate it.
Any luck with your handwriting?
I got it. I appreciate that. In some of the conversations I've had with the judiciary over the years, I'm not sure, we haven't had them before us yet, but the waiver issue, where some juveniles have been held in an adult center before they get adjudicated or before the waiver occurs.
Yep.
To waive them up or down. Do you all have, Madam Assistant Secretary, or an ongoing conversation with our judiciary regarding that matter?
Yes, we do.
Anything you'd like to, are you guys making any progress on, whether, I know you have limited space, however, so do the adult centers.
Yeah, I think if you don't mind, Senator, is it all right if I answer that question?
Sure.
So you're absolutely right. We've actually seen the number of youth charged as adults increase. And so we've seen our average daily population increase. So right now, I think as the analyst pointed out, Ms. Miller pointed out that almost 60% of juvenile detention facilities across the state are made up of young people who are automatically charged as adults, and the length of time they're staying is also increasing. So kids are staying about 120 days, and we've been in conversations with the judiciary on how we can try and, make sure that DJS has all of its reports, but as you know, these are pretty significant hearings that often get pushed out, and so we really would like to be able to hold all of those young people in our facilities. I think we have a number of young people that are still in adult detention centers that have orders to come to us, but we just don't have the capacity currently. But we are in communication with them on how we can make sure that we're serving that population.
We'd certainly like to stay in partnership with you during that. The juvenile system moves a little more swiftly than the adult system. And
Right.
to have a young adult or a juvenile
Right.
in an adult facility having to wait a term that adults would typically wait could be quite
Yeah.
traumatic for them. So do we have any more questions? Senator O'Sullivan.
Mr. Chair, we see where we have the numbers, we talk about arrests, but it seemed like between arrests and incidents, okay, can be a major difference because you have repeat incidents that happen constantly. And the good example is, in my community, we have a juvenile, okay, by number, 36 times, maybe even 38 now, that is carjacked. And when he goes in, it's an incident, it happens, but there's no arrest. There's nothing that happens, okay? And he's walking right out, and a day later, he does it again. Then later, and this has been repeated because we've talked to the captain, and it's a joke to our youth. And it's been ongoing, and it's a major problem, as we see everywhere, that there seems to be no accountability here. And I don't know how we can change this attitude or these actions or whatever, or the character of an individual. Because again, this is ongoing, it's a major problem. So these are not arrests. These are incidents that happen. So by number, do we have the numbers of the incidents that happen continuously and not arrests?
What we have are the complaints that were forwarded by police officers, because that's when our system picks up, right? So when a police arrests someone, they send us a complaint, a paper complaint, or they can request detention, and then we go through the DRA process to determine whether or not to detain a young person. But we're happy to get you the number of complaints, and we think that upholding public safety is really important, and making sure that we're able to treat young people and be able to get them the services they need quickly is really important. So we definitely share that goal with you.
And it's important because, we've seen it, a lot of people have these cameras on the doors, or they get these bells, and they have a lot of the photos and videos of kids walking down streets and getting in cars and going all the way down to see how they can get in there. And this is ongoing, this is not sight once in a while, this is ongoing. And it also depends on the neighborhood a lot of times, so it depends on they can even get in the neighborhood. But it's just happening a lot. And so I believe people are reporting these kind of incidents to our police department. And I just want to know how we can do better in that area. How can we make sure that we manage that maybe area? Because there's a lot of incidents going on that. So maybe we can, I don't know, have a conversation about that or what, but I think we need to do better in that area. Thank you.
Great, thank you,
Mr. Chairman.
Senator.
All right. Senator Roosevelt.
This is actually a question for you, Mr. Chairman. Because you know more about this than I do, and I don't think it's necessarily their responsibility. The exact situation Senator Stallings is talking about, I think, is going on in Prince George's County, too. It's happening in College Park with carjackings and smashing windows.
All over, unfortunately.
Yeah, exactly. Is your impression that the problem is that the police don't have the evidence to make the arrest? Is that the problem?
Well, sometimes. Not necessarily. So, typically carjacking, carjackings are normally with a weapon, or if someone's in the vehicle and they take the vehicle from them. So an arrest is an arrest, and then the investigation ensues. So I think sometimes on the surface, it may be claimed to be a carjacking, but then it ends up being something else.
Gotcha. I mean, I guess the reason I'm pushing this is kind of the example that he's citing is there's so many cameras around now. I don't really understand why it's so hard to identify who grabbed the car.
Well, I mean, if you're talking auto theft versus a carjacking, they're two different things.
I'm sorry, what, I'm a layman. What is it?
Theft of auto, it's
different
a
than-
vehicle that's not occupied. Carjacking
Is with the person.
someone's in the person.
Oh, I see. I didn't know that distinction.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, I didn't know that. You see, we're lay people over here. That's why I was asking you. I didn't know that distinction.
Yeah, so,
You never been JPR, so you haven't had that.
No, I have not had that.
yeah, so that's the issue, so.
Department of State Police, the Department of State Police is responsible for publishing the Uniform Crime Report. So if you're curious about definitions
We can
of
get those numbers.
violent crime.
Okay, no, I appreciate that. I mean, I understand that. Let me put it a different way. Doing bad things with cars. And so it's like a person in the car, a person not in the car, smashing the windshield of the car. You know, there are a lot of bad things you can do with cars, and that seems to be the crime of the moment. And so I'm just curious, we don't have to answer the question today, but we're talking about it, so we are the subcommittee we are, is I find it hard to believe, I mean, unlike cyber theft, where there aren't cameras taking pictures everywhere, it would seem like catching people doing things with cars
No, I agree.
would be easier to get than it is. And I think that we ought to think about it in the subcommittee of things we do. I got one more question then for these folks.
Sure, sure.
So you all only have authority, there's a question mark at the end of the sentence. Do you all only have authority to deal with a kid when they have been charged with a crime? Is that the way to think about it?
So the majority of cases are that, but there's also the SINS process, so child in need of supervision. So for something that wouldn't be a crime if you were an adult, like skipping school, not listening to your parents' rules, things like that, we can get a referral, and that can be from anyone, from the community, from law enforcement, and then we would go through the SINS process. And so we would meet with the young person, we'd meet with their family, and we would determine what services that young person would need, connect them to them.
Got it. Okay, well, that's helpful. What is the scale of those cases versus the arrest cases?
That's a good question. So we've actually seen an increase, I think, an increase in the number of cases because we've gone around the state and educated law enforcement and community members on how and that the process exists. So when the law changed in 2022, that changed juvenile court jurisdiction, we spent a lot of time educating local law enforcement about the process. And so I think we've seen especially for young kids under 13, I think we've seen about a tenfold increase.
But that's tenfold.
But it's still very small.
But that's from 1 to 10, or is it from 10 to 100?
It's not from 1 to, I'll get you the exact numbers.
Yeah, if you get us a number, what percentage of your cases are the
Yeah,
non-arrest?
it's a very small portion.
And
The
reason for
majority of
that
them are
is
arrests.
it's new?
90%.
90% of complaints come from police or school resource officers. So it would be a fraction of 10% from SINS.
But SINS could still be
It could also be a
from a police.
violation of probation.
I'm sorry, I didn't follow that. You're saying 90% of what?
90% of all the complaints forwarded to DJS.
Which includes arrests?
Yes.
Okay, so 90% are
Come
arrests
from-
and 10% are something else?
Roughly.
10%, I mean, those are like citizens' complaints, which also can
Yeah.
come in on a crime, or a peace order, or something like that. But a police report could come to us and we could review it and say, oh, this is actually a truancy issue, and this would be better handled with SINS and not necessarily through going through the process, or based on the youth's age.
Okay, I sort of get that. It would be helpful, I think, for us to get some statistics on the non-arrest referrals, or whatever you call them.
Absolutely.
What do they tend to be for?
Yeah, we
Who do
can
they come
definitely get you
from?
that.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right, cool. Any more questions or comments? All right, thank you all very
Thank
much. All right, I hope the secretary feels better.
Thanks, we'll send it.
We will be in touch about the date for the,
Perfect.
all right,
Yep, thank you.
Thank you.
take care. All right, that concludes our hearing for today. I'm sorry, here we go again. Must be a Monday. All right, we have 3 witnesses. Liz Park, Denise Henderson Johnson, I'm sorry, just 2, and then we have written testimony as well. Come on up. State your name when you get up to the table. If you have written testimony you'd like us to consider, please feel free to leave it. And you have 2 minutes each. Hello.
Hello. Do you want to go? You go. Okay. It's fine.
Good afternoon. Liz Park. I'm the chair of the Maryland Association of Youth Service Bureaus. And so we're just here in support of the work that DGS is doing in support of their budget. Youth Service Bureaus are designed to be, we're in COMAR, to be kind of the prevention arm of DJS. So those kids you were just talking about, the SINS kids, the kids that maybe haven't been arrested yet, is who Youth Service Bureaus were designed to work with. We really love the focus the department is taking on creating this continuum of care and how they're getting kids services to get them moving through the system. And so we just wanted to point out that youth service bureaus are in COMAR to provide those prevention services for youth, for juvenile services. We used to have 21 youth service bureaus across the state in 10 jurisdictions that received state funding, and now there's only 5 that receive state funding. We're looking to ask the legislature to look at the budget. We know it's a tight budget year, to find monies to rebuild and strengthen this model. We know that prevention saves money in the end, and that is keeping kids out of the system and keeping them from also experiencing the trauma of arrest and all those types of things. So thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Next.
Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, and members of the Budget Committee. My name is Denise Henderson Johnson, and I am a 20-year employee of the agency, as well as the president of AFSCME Local 3167, representing the dedicated employees of DJS. I want to thank the committee for the opportunity to testify today on the DJS budget. I am here to share the concerns of my coworkers and to highlight what we need to be successful in supporting the youth of Maryland. We have expressed concerns in previous years, and we continue to emphasize that we are severely understaffed, which poses significant safety risks for both staff and youth. The lack of sufficient staff creates a dangerous work environment, leaving our employees at greater risk of injury and making it harder to provide consistent care and supervision for our youth. As the budget analysis indicates, vacancy rates are high, particularly among residential staff. High vacancy rates concerning the residential staff have a profound negative impact on youth. With fewer staff members, there is less stability and fewer opportunities for meaningful engagement, which increases stress and uncertainty for the youth. This lack of support means fewer positive role models and less effective rehabilitative programs, hindering their emotional and social development. We appreciate programs such as the Thrive Academy, but we should not forget about programs that are designed for those youth who are detained. Short staffing also contributes to increased behavior issues and staff burnout, leading to a chaotic, under-resourced environment that ultimately prevents youth from receiving the care and guidance they need. In closing, the state must find a way to raise revenues to address the critical staffing shortages in agencies like ours. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Do you all care? I think we have yours. Do you care to leave your statement with us? All right. Thank you very much. Any questions or comments? Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Good to see you. This concludes our hearing.